Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the second session of Using CSS to Enhance Your Website, hosted by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. Last night, we did almost half a session talking about HTML forms, and then we got into CSS, what it was, and how it makes life a whole lot easier when you're trying to develop a website. We spoke about CSS selectors and how to use them. And I wanted to just go over the CSS selectors real quick. So the format for them is the selector. Why don't I bring up the file that I created last night? So I'll open up a file in Notepad. We're using Notepad as our text editor to write our programs. And hopefully from last session, you created a folder called CSS. And you have to remember to change the extension to not be .txt and to be all files. So let's see, I called this CSS. Yes, is that it? Let's see, CSS. I can't seem to find it. So what we'll do is I'll open up a new session in Notepad, and basically the format is the selector, followed by a curly bracket, and then a declaration, declaration 1, and then a colon, and then the value, right? And then followed by a semicolon, and you can add another, as many declarations as you want. So declaration 2, colon, value, and then you close it out with a closing curly bracket. All right, so an example was, for the selector, I was selecting HTML P tags, so P, and then curly bracket, and then declaration should be color, and then followed with a colon, and then the color, say red, and then a semicolon, and then a space, and then what's another CSS style would be text dash align, colon, and then I'll align it center. Why don't I align it left this time? And then semicolon, and followed by closing curly brackets. So that's the syntax, the format of CSS styles. So you have to select an HTML element first before you can apply a CSS style to it. So the format is always what you're selecting, what you want to, what element you want to apply a style to. So in the first session, we went over some selectors, and we spoke about just your basic HTML selector, which is this example right here, where I'm selecting a P tag. Other selectors were by ID. So if you give an element, an HTML element, an ID, then to reference that ID, you use a hashtag and then ID name. And that becomes your selector. And then you would do CSS code inside of the curly brackets. Another popular selector is selecting by a class. So if you assign a class name to different elements in your on your HTML page, you will reference it with a dot. So it's dot and then the class name, and then curly brackets, color, and semicolon, and curly bracket. All right, so these are the three main ways to reference to call selectors. So you do it by the element, you do it by an ID, prefacing it with a hashtag, or you do it by class name and you preface it with a dot. And don't forget, you're able to also group together these selectors. So I should want to apply a style to say a p tag, comma, and any h1 tags in my program, comma, and say I want a specific class. So I would do dot class name, and I could even apply it to a specific ID. So I would do comma, and I would just do hashtag ID name. Okay, and then you would do curly brackets and say I want to do color and I want to make it blue, semicolon, and close it with a hashtag. So this is how you group multiple selectors to get a specific style, CSS style. And in this case, the style would be the color blue. So I would make all my P tags blue, all my H1 tags would have the color of blue, a specific class name, and a specific ID. All right, so that is so one more thing about selectors. So say you want to be really specific. So you can see in my notepad session on the left, I've got an HTML template, and in the body of inside the body tag, you have an H1 tag, you have a P tag with an ID of first P, you have a P tag of class equals second P. So let's add a style. Let's do something real basic. So so say I wanted to call a P tag, right? So my selector is the P tag, and I'll do curly brackets, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to mess with the color. So the color, colon, and the color is going to be red. All right, and semicolon and curly brackets. Now I'll run this program. I will save it. And then you remember how to run from Notepad. You right click on the start in the lower left corner. You click on File Explorer. And you go out to the file. In this case, my file is CSSEX2. I go into my CSS folder, and then I double click on CSSEX2.html. It'll open up that file into a web browser. And you can see my style is just the color red, and it makes every P tag in my program the color red. So I have two P tags. Now, what if I wanted to get even more specific? So if you look at my CSS style, instead of just having P, I also want it to be any P tag that has a class of second P. So it would be P dot second capital P. That's the name of my class. If you look down here in the section P tag, the class name is section uppercase P. So if I do P, so I only want P tags to have a class of section P. So this time when I run my program, both P tags will not have the color red. Only the P tag that has a class of section P, which is this bottom P tag. All right. So I will do a file, I'll save it. I'll come over to my web browser on the right-hand side. All I have to do is refresh it. And you see the second P tag that says CSS class online, that doesn't have any red style any longer. Okay? So just to prove my point a little bit more, if you look over to the left, now what if I took the H1 tag and I gave that a class equal to section P? So now that has a class the same as this lower P tag down here. All right? So, but my selector is just saying I want only P tags that have a class of section P. So that won't affect the H1 tag. So when I run it, I'll get the same thing. That's what I had before. So if I save it, come over to the right in the web browser, refresh it, and nothing changes, right? But if I took P.section P and I put a comma because I want to group the selectors and put H1, now when I save it, now the H1 should turn red also. So I'll come over to my web browser, I'll refresh it, and boom, H1, the heading, welcome to my class, is suddenly red. All right, so that's how you use selectors to be able to put on, to attach style to different elements of your HTML page. So where we left off last session was we were talking about the 3 ways to insert CSS into your HTML page. And we only went over the first way, which was using an external CSS file, which is probably the most efficient way to call up different styles for your web page. So I'm just going to go over the external call to a CSS file, that method, and then we'll go on to the other 2 methods. So if you look over to the left, in Notepad, I have a HTML page, and up in between the head tags, I have a link tag. And link has the attribute rel, which equals, it tells it what kind of style sheet, or what kind of file your external file is. So it's a style sheet. Type is text/CSS. And let me expand my Notepad session. The href equals external.css. Now, external CSS is the name of the file I created last session. So let me just show you what that looks like. So I will open it. And CSS external. Now this file has an extension .css. I just have to find it. Oh, here it is. External.css. And what I did was I only, my selector is .section P, which dot is representing a class name. So wherever I find an element, an HTML element that has section P as its class, then I gave it the CSS style color purple. Text align is going to be centered, and the font size is going to be 50 pixels. Okay, so that's my CSS file, and I call it external.css. Now we'll go back to my HTML page. That's going to call that external file. All right. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. Okay. I'll expand it. All right. So if you look up here in the link tag, I've got an external.css file that I'm calling. Now the file lives in the same folder as my program. So once I run this, it should call the external CSS file, and it should give style only to the HTML elements that have a class at second P, which, looking at our HTML page, we've got this first P tag should be the only one that receives the style, the CSS style. If I do a file save, and then I'll right click, go in File Explorer, CSS, and I'll double click on CSS external.html. And if you look to the right in my web browser, it only applies the style to the first P tag. All right. Now, if you wanted to change things around, you would change the external.css file, right? And that's how you call an external CSS file into your HTML program. Next, we're going to look at internal CSS, all right? So I will get rid of the link. Actually, I'm going to do a file save as. And I'm going to call this one CSS internal. Internal.html. All right, so now I can mess with this file. And I'm going to give myself some space here. So in the body tag, actually in the head tag, the way you add internal style is by adding a we're going to add a style tag. And the style tags go inside the head tag. So if you look off to the left in my notepad session, I've got style. And style will be closed out. And I'll add a closing style tag. And then inside the style is where we're going to add our styles. All right. So why don't we mess with the body tag? So I'm going to select the body tag. So the entire body, everything inside the body now is going to have. I'm going to give it a background color. So give it a style of background color. All right. So the brackets. And background dash color, right? Colon, and I'll give it a weird color called linen, semicolon, and I will close this out. Remember the closing curly brackets, I like to put it underneath the first letter of the selector. All right, so And why don't we do something to our H1 tag? So give some space. So all these CSS styles now are put inside the style tag, right? And the style tags go inside the head tag in HTML. So I'll start with the H1. So my selector is an H1 element, space, curly brackets, hit enter. And here I'm going to give it a color of maroon. And I'll give it a margin. Now I'm going to do, I'll do text align, colon, since it's an H1 tag, why don't we center it? Semicolon, and then you have to remember, always close out the style with a curly bracket. All right, so remember, we're talking about ways to call up CSS, ways to use CSS. So we already went over an external CSS file, and now we're talking about internal style tags. So for this, I'm just going to do a save, and I'll right click and File Explorer. And the name of my file is cssinternal.html. I double click on it and voila. Off to the right on my web page, I don't know if you can see the background is sort of like a light pink, because we applied the body, we selected the body tag, and we applied the background color of linen. I guess that's the color of linen. And we also selected an H1 tag, which we have down here that says welcome to my class. And we gave that color maroon, and we did text align centered. So the background is linen for the whole page, and the H1 tag is maroon, and it's been centered with a text align center. So that is how you do an internal call for CSS style. Now, the last one is called inline. And what this is, I'm going to do a save as with my file in Notepad. So file save as, and here, CSS. And I just have to change the save as type to all files. And I'm going to call this CSS, instead of internal, I'll call it inline.html, CSS inline.html. All right. So now I don't need the internal styles, so I can get rid of these guys. And inline style is basically where you take the individual elements inside the body tag. So if I want to give a style today to the H1, you go into the H1 tag and you type in style equals double quotes, and say I want this to be, I'm going to give it a style of color, and then it's colon, and then the value of the color attribute. What's a different color? How about orange? And then semicolon to separate it if I have another style. And I can make this text align. Why don't I make it text align right? So colon, and then the word right, and then semicolon, and then you have to close out everything on the other side of the equal sign has to be surrounded with double quotes. So it's the format is style equals, and then you list all the properties that you want. So within double quotes. So I've got a double quote, and then I've got the one style color, colon, orange, semicolon, and I've got the other style test dash align, colon, right, semicolon. And then I close it with a double quote, and then I have the end tag for the H1 element. All right, so if I run this now, the only element in my HTML page will be the H1 tag. So file, save, and I will right click on start, click on File Explorer, and go to CSS, and I will click on CSS inline.html. I'll double click on it, do this, and then if you look off to the right in my web browser, the only CSS style has been applied to the H1 element. So my style was orange, it's sort of orange, looks like yellow orange. And the text align pushed it all the way over to the right. So it's right justified. So those are the three ways you can reference CSS styles. You can do it externally with an external CSS file. You can do it internally by using the style tags up in the head section up here of your HTML page, or you can do them inline where you add styles to the individual elements that you want to have the style. All right. So that's it for how to call the different to tell you about the different ways to reference CSS. One more thing about which is preferential treatment. When you're dealing with external calls to an external CSS file, or when you're dealing with an internal style. So remember, if I'm dealing with an external call, I'm going to have a link tag within the head tags, right? And I'll link out to an external CSS file. And also, if I had an internal call to CSS styles, I would use the style tag inside the also inside the head tag. So what if the styles are calling the same selector but have different styles? So say you're dealing with the color style, right? So my link to an external file is going to have, say it's going to have the color blue, but my internal style is going to have the color red. Okay, so which style will be applied, right? So say I am my selector for the link is for the paragraph tag, or for the H1 tag, right? So H1, and I'm going to apply color blue to H1. Now for the internal style, I'm also doing H1. So my selector is the same, but the styles are different. So which style would be applied to the H1 tag? Would it be blue, or would I give it the color red? Well, it all depends on which one comes first. So if the internal style is defined before the link, then the H1 H1 would get the color. Well, looking at what's in my program right now, so I have the link, it comes first, and then I have the internal style, it comes second. Whichever one comes second inside the head tags is what's going to have the CSS style applied. So if you look at my program, in Notepad. So the internal style would win out in this case. So the H1 would get the color red and not the color blue, because whichever one comes second, as far as how you code it in your HTML page, is the one that's going to have the preferential style applied. So if I were to move the link inside the head tag, now the H1 tag would get the color blue because the link comes second. Does that make sense? So whichever one comes first, or whichever one comes second, not first, is the one who's going to have the CSS style applied. Okay. Now, the CSS style that gets the top priority is inline. So if you look at my program, the way it would be read, it would look at the style tag first. So it's saying, oh, H1 gets the color of red. And then it would look at the link second and would say, oh, H1 gets the color of blue. But then it would look at inline styles. So if you look down inside the body tag, I've got an H1 element with a style color equals color of orange. So if I ran this program, the H1 tag would have the color of orange. Inline always is the highest priority because you're adding style directly to a specific element. So internal and external styles, like up above here inside the head tag, it's all based on who comes second is going to have the priority. But then inline will always have the priority over either internal or external. So now let's talk about comments in CSS. So with HTML, we had, let's see, if you look at my program, with HTML, it's lesson sign, exclamation point, dash, dash, right? So, and then it's dash, dash, greater than sign to close out the comment. So the way I have it, if you look at Notepad, the way I have my comment is this whole H1 tag will be commented out. And I'll prove it to you by why don't I do a save as, and then I'll run the program and I'll show you how the comment works in HTML. And then I'll show you what we do in CSS. So for this one, CSS comment, HTML. Okay, so now I can mess with this program, and I'll do a save, and I have to rerun this one as CSS comment. Double click on CSS, and CSS comment is now off to the right in my web browser. And why don't I close these out? Some of these other tabs. Okay, so if you look at the right in my web browser, after I ran my program with an HTML comment, commenting out the H1 tag, H1 tag is not displayed in my web page, but the two P tags are, because they're not commented out. Now, so I can take these out. So if you look over in Notepad, I'm taking out the HTML comment, and the way CSS works is I'll do an internal call the CSS. So I'll do a style tag, and I'll do a closing style tags. And these style tags have to be placed inside the head tag. All right. So I can get rid of these spaces. Okay, so inside my style tag, I'm going to call, let's see, I'm going to call H1 tag. So my selector is H1, and then curly brackets, and we'll just mess with color. So color equals, how about maroon again? If I'm spelling it right. Maroon. I can't spell maroon, so what I'll do is pick another color. How about gold? Right, now close this guy out. For the brackets, all right. And a semicolon here, just to be consistent. All right, so I've got one style. I've got a selector of H1, and I'm giving it a style of colored gold. All right, so the way you do comments inside of for CSS is you go / and asterisk. All right, and then if I wanted to comment out the whole thing, the whole CSS style, I would then do asterisk and / So everything in between the / asterisk and the asterisk / is now commented out. All right, so what I'll do is down below in the body tag, for the H1 element, I'm going to take out that style, that inline style. All right. Okay. So if I run this, I'll do a save. Actually, I don't think I have to do that. I didn't, on my web browser, on the right-hand side, all I have to do is refresh. All right, so I refresh it. And see how the comment, if you look off to the left, in Notepad, the comment took out the internal style of H1 having a color of gold, and it just displayed the H1 tag like normal, which is H1 is displayed as bold and kind of big. So welcome to my class doesn't have the color gold. Now, one thing you should do also is you could put a comment above this CSS style. So I should say / asterisk. This is a style for H1. All right, then I would have to close it out with a asterisk / All right, and that is just a note, right? Comments are just notes for the programmer to be able to read their programs and understand them. And also, if another program were to try to do modifications to your program, these comments can really be helpful to help them understand quickly what your program is doing. So, so now if I run this program, right, because the style, the CSS style is not commented out. There's just a comment above the style. So when I run this program this time, the H1 tag should turn out gold. So I just have to save it, and I'll come over to the right for my web browser, and I'll do a refresh. All of a sudden, the H1 tag is now gold. The text inside of it is gold. You can also put a comment inside the H1 tag. So some people might want to do a comment right here. on the side of it. As I say, color is gold. And you always have to close out the comment with an asterisk and a forward slash. So, and this won't do anything. This won't change how the CSS style is applied at all. So I save my file, I come over, I refresh my page, and it's the same thing. You're still applying the color gold style to the H1 element. All right, and that's about it for. There is one more thing about comments that you might run into. You can do multi-line comments in CSS simply by, if you look at my example over in Notepad. So I've got a comment above the style that's going to be applied to the H1 tag. So instead of ending the first line with asterisk forward slash, just hit enter, and you can put more comments on the second line, and on the third line. So as long as you're wrapping the multi-line comment with the forward slash asterisk and then ending it with asterisk forward slash, this works out fine. It's just a longer comment note for yourself. So if I save it, come over to the right and refresh my page, nothing happens because the computer does not use comment lines. That's just for the programmer. Now let's move on to CSS Colors. Just like in HTML, there are multiple ways to reference different colors. I'm only going to cover the three main ways that colors are referenced, and those are by name, color name directly, like in my example in Notepad, I've got the color gold, or they're referenced by hex number, which is asterisk and then 6 numbers, or the reference by RGB, which is a series of 3 numbers that identify a specific color. So let's start with the color name, referencing the color name, because so far in this class, all I've done is reference them by name. So it's pretty straightforward. So let's see, I'll just real quick, I'll get rid of this comment. I'll get rid of this comment too. And the color, there's actually a color called Dodger Blue, after the Los Angeles Dodgers. I just have to spell it right. Dodger Blue. All right. So I will change that. I'm going to do a file save as. I'll call this a different file name. So I'll change that text to all files. And now I'm going to call this CSS Color. Color name. All right, I'll save that. And now I have to run it. File Explorer. And I go into CSS and I call it, oh, sorry. Made a little mistake. I just have to go back and save it again. File, save as. And I didn't name it .html. CSS color name .html. I save it. Now I can run it through File Explorer, CSS, and here it is. CSS color name. I double click on it, and off to the right, you'll see I've got Dodger Blue for my H1 tag. So if, off to the left in my notepad section, I've got the selector H1, and I've got the color property with a value of Dodger Blue. All right, and off to the right, you can see my H1 tag comes out Dodger Blue. All right, so that's using color by name. Now, why don't we talk about using the hash value of the color to reference a color. All right, so instead of the H1 tag, I'm going to do, actually, why don't I change the body? I'm going to add another, I'll add an H2 tag. And I'll call this text reference color. Okay, and I've got to change this to an H2 tag. H2. All right, so now up above in my style, in between my style tags, I'm going to add a style. I'm going to select the H2 tag, and I'm going to change, so color is still my property, colon, and now I want a color that's referenced by a hash number. So hash, you preface it with a hashtag, and then let's see, what's a good example of the hash number? These are very, very easy to look up. They're on the, just look up hash color numbers to get all kinds of numbers that you can use. So this, I'm gonna do something called the color tomato, which should be FF6347. I'm sorry if I said they were 6 numbers. They're alphanumeric characters, so they're alpha and numeric. So, like in this case for tomato, I've got FF6347. So why don't I run this now? I'll do a save, and off to the right on my web page, I'm going to just refresh this page, and boom, I still have the H1 tag that's referencing the color by name, and now I have an H2 tag that says hash reference color that is the color of tomato. That's supposed to be the color tomato. And so the final way to reference colors is through RGB. So first off, why don't I come down, and in between my body tag, I'm going to copy this H2 tag, and I'm going to create an H3 tag. And let's say H3. And I'm going to say this is RGB reference color. Then up above, I'm going to do a copy of this H2 style. And my selector now is H3. And like I said before, I still am going to use the color property. But instead of hex and a alphanumeric code for color, I'm going to use RGB. So RGB is going to have three numbers. So it's parentheses. Let me get a color. How about? Oh, I'll show you the color tomato in RGB. So it's first of all, it's, it's colon, RGB, parenthesis, and then for tomato, it should be 255, comma, space 99, comma, space 71, and then end parenthesis. All right, so that's my style for the H3 elements, and it should come out as tomatoes. All right, so I'm going to do a file save, and then I will refresh the page, and as you can see, now I have a third H tag, this one being an H3, so it's a little bit smaller, but it's the same color of tomato that the hex reference color was. And the name color is still just Dodger blue. So those are the three ways, the three most common ways you're going to reference color, CSS colors. So it's by name, it's by hex code, or it's by RGB. Now, the last thing tonight that we're going to talk about is the background color. All right, so we know how to reference colors by name, by hex code, or by RGB, but now we're going to apply those colors to the background. All right, so let's see. We've already got it set up, so I've got an H. If you look in the body tags, over in my notepad section on the left, I've already got an H1, an H2, and an H3. All right, so let's give it a background color using the different hex codes, using different ways to control the color, either by name, hex, or RGB. So we've got Dodger blue. Why don't we change the colors? So instead of Dodger blue, I'm going to use something called, I think this is, let's see, something different. How about this purple? Purple. So H1 will have the color purple. And let me just do some different colors here. If I go into a browser session and just look up hex color codes, right? What it brings up is, let's see, olive. How about olive? So I just looked it up and I would copy that. So olive is going to be hashtag 808000. And then I'll look up a different color for RGB. So RGB code or color. Let's see. I just want a listing of the different codes. What's a good color? Something different. How about brown? How about this color, brown? It looks a little different. Where is RGB? So I found the color code for RGB 255, 0, and that's the color for red. So what I'm going to do is, so I remember these things, I'm going to add a comment to each one. All right, so you can practice doing comments. So / asterisk, and then I'm just going to say this is red, and then it's asterisk / and then this one, and you can put your comments anywhere, / asterisk olive for the hex code, and asterisk / and then this one, because I don't need a comment, I just want you to practice so you remember how to do comments. Purple, because this color is by name. All right, so now I have 3 different styles for 3 different elements, and they all have they're referencing colors 3 different ways. All right, so now, but I don't want it to be color. I want it to be background color. Background, yes, color. And you can see what background color does. I mean, sometimes, a lot of times you want to use the background color on the whole screen. So you would give that style of background color to like the body tag. So everything inside the body tag is what's going to be displayed on your web page. So if you want the whole background of your web page to be a certain color, then you would add that style to the body tag. Or you would select the body tag up above. So we just have to add background color here, and we'll be good to go. Yes, color. All right. So I am going to do File, Save As, because I want to call this something different. So File, Save As. And we'll call this CSS background color.html. Hit enter, and then I'll have to run this for the first time. So right click on Start, click on File Explorer, and then go into your folder. Mine's CSS, and then I'm going to double click on CSS background color.html. Boom. Off to the right on my web page, you can see how the background color just colors the elements that I have attached the style to. So H1 has a color of purple. The H2 tag, which says hex reference color, has a background color of olive. And H3, which says RGB reference color, has a background color of red. All right, so now I'm going to add a CSS style for the body element. All right, so this would be my whole page. And 1, 2, 3. And I'll do a background color. And one color that we used previously was called linen. So I'll use that again. I'll reference the color by name. And let's see, semicolon and a closing curly bracket. Oh, semicolon, and then down below, under the B, for the body selector, I will do a curly bracket. All right. And so now our whole page should have a background of linen, but the elements H1, H2, and H3 that have a style attached to it, a background color style, will maintain their colors. So you'll still see purple, olive, and red. It's just the whole rest of the page will have a background color of linen which was like sort of a very light pink, I think. So if I save this and then come over to my web page, I refresh it, and I don't know if you can really see that. So maybe I should change it from linen to something that's going to stand out. How about orange? I'll do that. So file, and I save it. And then I come back over here to my web page, and I refresh it, and now I've got an orange background. But you see, any other elements, like the H1, the H2, and the H3, that have a style attached to it, they still have their background color style. So that's it for tonight. And we'll have one more session for this CSS class, and we'll pick up where we left off. All right, have a good night.